Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. I just thought I'd return to you tonight for this premiere video tonight for the next album review. I hope you will enjoy this midnight release for Mac Miller's Balloonerism album. It is a new album, but it came out 7 months ago, so it came out a little while ago. Sorry about the ding, that's my messenger. But overall, I'm going to discuss what I listened to for his second posthumous album since his passing back in September of 2018. And let you know my thoughts on Mac Miller, Balloonerism, the follow-up to Circles. So let's dive into this posthumous seventh studio album that I got a chance to listen to. So it starts with Tambourine Dream, which is a pretty interesting intro track. It's only 33 seconds, so you get a lot of tambourine instrumentation in this, and it's pretty solid, 4.75 out of 5. DJ's Chord Organ, featuring SZA, is a good song for how it sounds. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this at first, because it started off very slow, and most of the tracks in here are not terrible songs, but overall, it's going to get a 4.5 out of 5. SZA's singing was pretty solid for the most part. Mac Miller does a few moments with his rapping and singing moments, but overall, execution-wise, I think this song performed in a good way. It did good in its own way. So, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. Do You Have a Destination is mostly where Mac Miller does introduce his rapping moments for the start of this record. Officially, he starts rapping at this part of the track, this part of the album, like the third song all the way to the end. But overall, I think Do You Have a Destination was a good track. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. I did like it for how it sounded, and overall, it's just the mixing and production did fairly well, but there were some critiques I had as I went through the track. $5 Pony Rides is a good song. It's just Mac Miller singing in this track, and it does fairly good for how it sounds. So I'd give it a solid 4.5 out of 5. Good track for how it sounds. Not the worst track, but not the best song, but it is a good, serviceable enough track to get you through the record. Friendly Hallucinations is a 4.5 out of 5. I think Mac Miller does some of his rapping in a good way, and it sounded alright for how it was. So 4.5 out of 5. And I found out that this record was being made in 2014 when he was still alive. I know he passed due to some kind of overdose back in September 7th of 2018. It was really sad to hear about that because he was very talented for sure, and he still will be missed to this day. But overall, yeah, just 4.5 out of 5 for Friendly Hallucinations. It's a good track, but there were some repetitive moments as you go through the track with his singing. Mrs. Deborah Downer is a good song for how it sounds. I think Mac Miller's rapping style in this is pretty good for how it sounds. And the overall track mixed fairly good. So another 4.5 out of 5 for this one. Stoned is a pretty interesting track. I think when you get to the middle of the record, it starts shifting into the more weird vibe kind of stoner tracks that you can really get on board with the Mac Miller style that he usually goes for. But overall does fairly well, 4.5 out of 5. Shangri-La is a good song in its own way. I did dig how Mac Miller was singing this track, and it did fairly solid for the most part. Another 4.5 out of 5. His singing and his rapping did pretty good. Funny Papers is a good song for how it sounds. I think with this song, did a good job in its own way. Um, I think Mac Miller's rapping moments in this track are the highlights to this track, and overall, the mixing and production is pretty solid, so another 4.5 out of 5. Excelsior was kind of weird of a song, but it worked for the execution. So I think Mac Miller's rapping and singing potential was pretty solid. So another 4.5 out of 5. And Transformations featuring Delusional Thomas was kind of a weird song. It was on the cringe kind of side, but I wouldn't say it's a terrible track. I think it's a good track with how it sounds. It sounds like the stuff from the second album he made in 2013, Watching Movies, something album. I can't remember the album's official title name by heart, but I know I've listened to Mac Miller since 2013, since that album. But I did listen to his first album too, some songs on his first album. But overall, I think Transformations featuring Delusional Thomas is a good song, 4.5 out of 5. Mannequins is a good song too for how it sounds. I think Mac Miller's singing potential did fairly well for the most part, and overall, the rapping moments are pretty solid, and the weird auto-tune vocals are pretty weird too. So another 4.5 out of 5. Rick's Piano was a good song for 5 minutes and 8 seconds. You're in for a pretty interesting track before you get to the closer of the record. But overall, it does have some weird moments with Mac Miller saying something about Rick Rubin's piano or whatever. But overall, the track did fairly good. So another 4.5 out of 5. Tomorrow We'll Never Know is an almost 12-minute song. It is a lengthy track to end the record, but it is a pretty good track. I would say this outro to the record is good, but I wouldn't say it's one of the best closing tracks, but it is a good closing track for how it sounds. Mac Miller did some singing moments in this track, and overall with the execution, I think the delivery played it fairly good for the most part. So another good song in its own way. 4.5 out of 5. Overall, production, mixing, and execution-wise, I think Mac Miller Balloonerism for this whole entirety of the record was a good record. I can for sure say that it's a good record. Sorry, my cat just woke up from a nap. Yes, Titan, I see you. Okay. But, yeah, Mac Miller did a good job on this record for the most part. I think, I know this is his second posthumous album, so this was a recording album that he recorded in 2014 with these tracks, but they finally finished this record after waiting 5 years since the first posthumous album, Circles. Which honestly, I think after this, I think they should kind of cool it off with Mac Miller stuff. I think after Swimming, that was kind of his official last albums before his death. And it's really sad that he's gone now. Since almost 8 years now. It's been 7, 8 years now. Technically 7 years. But in September, it's going to mark 7 years since his passing. But still, may he rest in peace. His music will live on as something that people will be talking about for generations to come. He was a very talented rapper, good singer too, from time to time, with certain songs. But overall, I think he was very talented with his rapping style, and I think he was probably the better option than Logic and others. Logic's not terrible, but he's not like one of my favorite rappers. But he's good in his own way. He has his own style of things, but overall, Mac Miller was definitely had a good record for this one. And if I were to give Mac Miller Balloonerism a score, I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 for this record. I know it came out January 17th of 2025, this record, so I am a little late to the party for this record to review it, but at least I got this one out of the way, because this is one I wanted to review for the longest time. I just didn't come around to it because I was so busy during most of the year with other albums to review and new songs, and you get the gist. There was a lot of music for 2025. There still is more music to come for the third and fourth quarter of this year. But overall, Mac Miller put out a good record, and his label put out a good album to commemorate the memory of Mac Miller, and his music will live on as in generations to come. And just he was very talented of an artist, and he's still missed to this day. So rest in peace, Mac Miller. Your music was amazing. It lifted us all up. Even the weird kind of tracks you do sounded pretty cool. It sounded pretty cool. So, sorry, I slurred with my wording. So, 8 out of 10 for Mac Miller Balloonerism. I hope you enjoyed this album review tonight. It is premiering at midnight, and thank you guys for watching.